Hi, and welcome to this CIPS session on preparing for constructed response exam questions. My name is Kirsty Parkinson, and I'm the awarding manager for assessment here at CIPS. As you begin your qualifications journey with CIPS, you'll want to know where you should begin your studies. So we've created this useful video that will guide you through the resources created by CIPS and the other support that's available for you as you start your study journey. All of these resources can be found in the Student Zone. So first of all, you'll need to familiarise yourself with the syllabus and the learning outcomes and the indicative content. You'll be able to find this on the CIPS pages. More on this coming up. Again, on the CIPS pages on the website, you'll find our globally recognised qualifications syllabus is freely available to download or view online. So to familiarise yourself with the syllabus and your module options, you can then start to plan your study time by identifying how many hours you need to do each week based on the number of credits per module. Okay, so let's have a look at the knowledge that you'll need to learn for your exam, which is explained to you in the syllabus. So the syllabus will give you the learning outcomes, which, if you like, is the overarching theme of the content. So, for example, you might find the learning outcome says something like aspects of organizational infrastructure that shape the scope of a procurement and supply function. Then underneath that, you find the assessment criteria, and this gives you a breakdown of that learning outcome or theme. So looking at key aspects of organizational infrastructure, the assessment criteria breakdown might say something like key aspects of corporate governance. And then the bullet pointed list that you can see here, this is what we call the indicative content for each module. And this gives you a further indication of the elements that you should learn. But remember, it's not an exhaustive list. CIPS examiners use the syllabus to set the questions. So if you use the example I've just talked about, organizational infrastructure with the assessment criteria of key aspects of corporate governance, the CIPS examiners might set a question like, explain 5 reasons why it's important to maintain effective governance standards within the procurement function. So you can have a look at that example and others by looking at the sample questions and answers on constructed response, and those are also freely available on our website. So in most countries, the constructed response exam are computer-based. However, in some countries, we do still run paper-based versions of these exams. They're only available in May and November. As you select your exam, depending on where you're based, you'll find out if the constructed response exams are available as computer-based or paper-based. There's a full exam guide for these questions available for free on the cips.org for both computer-based and paper-based. The questions aren't different in computer-based and paper-based, it's just a different method of assessment. Remember, constructed response means you're expected to construct or write your answers like an essay. And these apply to certain modules at level 4 diploma, level 5 advanced diploma, and level 6 professional diploma. And of course, these constructed exams are marked by qualified assessors. They're not marked by computer. So again, there's a range of exam guides for these questions, which is freely available on cips.org. We've also got video resources which you can watch, and these show you the online platform if you're doing these assessments via the computer-based exams. So it's really important that you optimize your study time. In each syllabus, you'll find the amount of time you should dedicate to studying for taking exams at that qualification level. So, for example, for CIPS Level 4 diploma, we recommend 250 guided learning hours, and you'll see this acronym described as GLH. And this should be completed in the form of tutored lectures and workshops. As well as those learning hours, students should also complete 335 hours of wider reading and learning activities. That's known as self-study. There are lots of free learning resources available through our student zone that you could use to fill those 335 hours. These include things like podcasts, webinars, interesting articles, and CIPS networking events. And these all contribute to your learning time. For students who are studying entirely via self-study, you'll need to be prepared to dedicate the time to finding resources that will help you to find the 250 tutorial hours, the things that you would normally learn that would be taught via tutorials and workshops, say, for example, the sorts of things that are commonly provided through approved CIPS study centres. So, for example, you could use CIPS e-learning, and that would count towards your guided learning time, and it can be completed in your own time. However, we do advise that you don't use the CIPS e-learning in isolation because it's been designed to test your knowledge that you might have gained, say, from using the CIPS study guides. And those also count towards your 250 guided learning hours. All of the study guides and the e-learning can be purchased through CIPS Online Bookshop, and you can get an ebook of the guide. But remember, whether you're being taught or you're entirely self-study, you do need to do those 335 hours of wider reading. So let's look at an example of how we understand the breakdown of each module. So we're looking at an example of L4M1, scope and influence of procurement and supply. So that's level 4. This is a 12 credit module. The CR means it's a constructed response question, so the one that you provide an essay style answer to. The actual exam itself is 3 hours, and there are 120 hours of guided learning and also self-study. The C means it's a core module. So let's look at an example. So here's an example of a constructed response question on a computer-based exam, and this is how it looks as you start to type your answer. At level 4, we may decide to split that question down into 2 parts. So the subject matter is linked, but by splitting it into 2 parts, we're sort of helping you to structure the way you answer the question. So you can see here it's split down into parts A and part B. Okay. So you will also see there are what's known as resources. So these are the scenarios that will be presented in some of the questions. This gives you some context to the question, which it's really important that you refer to that when you're answering the question. So constructive response method of assessment has been specifically chosen by CIPS to enable students to demonstrate not just their knowledge, but their understanding and application. So it's insufficient simply to answer the question by giving a list or an outline of your memory of the facts and the theories and the models alone. You need to give more information to that. And as I say, if there's a resource there, make sure you're referring to that in your answer. This just shows you some of the functionality of how you look at that resource. And in this example, it shows you that there's a table of information in that resource. So when you see a table of information, it's not going to be automatic that you have to do a calculation. Sometimes that table of information is used to give you further context. So, for example, the size of the procurement function, or it might be categories of spend and the amounts within each category. And again, that's all helped to get you to use that information to frame your answers to show that you've really understood the content that you've been learning. Okay, so you'll also need to understand the different types of command words that we use in these constructed response questions. So there's a list of those available on the website in the student zone if you look for this exam guide. So for example, the command word explain will require you to give the reasons for or to account for something, and it shows that you know the subject well. We might use a command word like outline, and that will require less detail. It's sometimes used when there's more breadth to the element being tested than there is depth. So, for example, when there's a range of examples you could give, but there's not really very much that you could say about them. And that sort of example is where we would use the command word outline. But if you see something like explain, you're being asked to give a lot more information and show a greater depth of knowledge. Okay, so you will see these command words in all of the constructed response questions. Don't panic. You don't need to learn them. You don't need to memorize them. Just make sure that you've had a look at those command words and you've got some understanding of what they mean, because this gives you the clue to what the examiners are looking for when you're answering the question. We've also got sample answers on the CIPS website, and that will be a really excellent resource for you to look at so that you can see what the command words mean in practice. Okay, so timing is everything. You need to spend 5 minutes reading the instructions on the question paper and read them through twice. Read those questions through twice to make sure you've got a really good understanding of what's being asked. We would also recommend that you look at all of the questions before you start. Remember that there will be between 2 and 4 scenario or data source type of questions that will be presented to you for each test. Be ready to stop answering so that you can divide your time correctly between all of the questions. But don't worry, you can go back if you feel you haven't quite finished your answer and you've got time at the end. Please don't waste time giving a detailed introduction to your answer, because it probably won't attract marks, because most of those marks are gained by addressing what we call the ask of the question. So the actual requirement, the thing that the question is asking you to do, that's where you're going to gain the marks. And please don't waste time by giving us more examples than we've asked for. So for example, if we've asked for 5 of something, don't give 6 or 7. The examiners have to take the first 5 that you've given, and then they are required to stop marking. Okay, let's have a look at how the papers are constructed. In each of the constructed response exams, you'll find these at level 4, diploma level 5, advanced diploma, and level 6, professional diploma. And you can expect 4 questions worth 25 marks each. The exception to this is level 5, module 1, L5M1, which has 5 questions worth 20 marks. And of course, level 6, M4, which is the future of the profession and is designed to be taken at the very end of your studies, that has 2 questions worth 25 marks. Okay, so I hope you're feeling ready to get started with your qualifications. Follow the links in the video and the descriptions on this presentation. You'll find information on the YouTube channel so that you can get straight to the resources of learning to support the qualification that you're studying. Thank you very much.